Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. Here I am in the not quite full C2 boxes. Why? Because if I've done my calculations right, and at 1 cubic meter of contents per box, then this is what 500 million US dollar bills look like. And with so much talk about how this funding level has been passed, most of it extraordinarily predictable, I thought it would be fun to actually visualize it in the game. And in addition to putting it in the game, I thought I should put it in perspective, because perspective seems to be lacking. Disney earns this much money every 54 hours. But yeah, you say that's Disney. They own everything. Activision Blizzard earns it roughly every 3 weeks. But again, you might say, they have a number of well-established titles, not just one franchise. Well, okay. Grand Theft Auto 5, just GTA 5, earns it every 200 days. 200 days. Not 10 years. So yes, it may be a nice round number with lots of zeros and halfway to another number with one more zero, but actually not all that big in terms of revenues from popular games. Which is what Star Citizen is, a popular early access game still in development, so we can stop hyperventilating about it. Now, some will point out that $500 million is by far the largest revenue from a Kickstarter campaign. Star Citizen hasn't been a Kickstarter campaign for many years, and I don't mean that simply in the sense of no longer being on Kickstarter.com. A Kickstarter is telling people that if you give us enough money, then we can get started on this. Star Citizen is an early access game self-funded from ongoing sales to its players. To be still describing it as a Kickstarter is like Tom Brady has the most Super Bowl MVP awards from a player from Junipero Cerro High School in San Mateo. Technically true, but not really the relevant point in discussion. But more than a few people seem to be stuck in the same narrative. Which brings me, for example, to Kotaku. Apart from linking to the correct Reddit post, cut and pasting the two numbers from the RSI website, and inserting the current year, the entire article could have been written in 2015, and for all I know, it was. It's like how newspapers have obituaries pre-written on famous people over a certain age. But at least the newspapers will bother to update their article with what the Queen has been doing in the last few years. I would just call this lazy journalism, but that would indirectly elevate it undeservedly to the category of journalism. It's just lazy writing. Well, so 500 million, certainly more than I'll ever see in one place in my life in the real world, so even if it isn't outrageous as the revenue from a game title. And what have we gotten for all that money? Now, the cut and paste, same thing for the last 10 years crowd will immediately say, we've gotten nothing. But all the people logging in each week aren't playing nothing. They aren't playing everything that they're hoping for, but they aren't playing nothing. So the first and perhaps the primary thing we have gotten from this money is a company, Cloud Imperium. Now, I think it's quite fair prediction that the ultimate legacy of this project will be a company and not a game. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, but I pledged for a game, not a company. Really? Do you think that if you put a printout of specifications on a shelf next to a stack of money and come back later, that transdimensional code fairies will have magically left you a market-ready gold disc? And in some respects, the fact that there was no company was necessary for the Kickstarter. If Microsoft or EA had, in 2012, opened a project on Kickstarter.com to have players fund their next big game by giving money in advance, wouldn't we have all said, WTF? You guys have already got more than enough money. Also, the early backers knew, in their guts, that if Chris Roberts was truly going to realize his vision, that it was going to have to be at the helm of his own company, and not partnered with someone who will push for it to be ready before it completely was. We'd seen that story before. We knew how it would turn out. We knew that it would turn out good, but disappointing. And CIG has some formidable assets, such as that new performance capture studios. But you say, I didn't pledge for a motion capture studio, I pledged for a game. Well, yes, you did. It was one of the stretch goals. And second, I anticipate that this will eventually be a moneymaker. You see, no single project is going to keep a performance capture space like this busy all the time. What happens in the rest of the time? Well, it gets rented out to other projects, which between TV and movies, there is a huge demand for performance capture facilities. It also purchased a fair amount of R&D. And when you're pledging for a game that pushes the boundaries, then yes, you are paying for R&D. And it isn't cheap. It also involves throwing out a lot of things that didn't work on the way to discovering the thing that does. Pcache was replaced by iCache, which is now being replaced by the entity graph and replication layers, which hopefully will provide proper throughput at scale. Decisions on creating their own Star Engine branch of the CryEngine and then Lumberyard also brings features as well as costs. And often it has paid off. The uncompromising ambition to have a game that never forces you to have a loading screen has resulted in an experience of utter seamlessness that other current space games have simply abandoned short of, with some excuse about how ship interiors really aren't that important or how flying from surface to orbit really isn't that important. But it is. We know. And now we are approaching another thing that no other game has done: the ability to pass your character from one game server to another with no apparent transition to the player. That's big, and we have certainly seen that it's not simple or cheap. And we've paid for the live service. I don't know what CIG pays AWS every month to keep the infrastructure going, but it's not insignificant. I suspect that more than a few of these boxes were delivered to AWS. Then, of course, there is the early access game itself. Incomplete, certainly, buggy, absolutely, frustrating, often, but still fun enough to have a large player count week after week, and nobody is coming to the live servers just out of masochism. No, that's what Evocati is for. And while everybody is hoping for what future features will bring, that's not what is driving current playtime. Current playtime comes from current fun. Or as I said in one of my early videos in this channel, I'm having fun already. And we have been getting regular expansions of the game, and most of those new releases have been exciting. But just like the cargo hold of the C2 is divided into two parts, so too is the spending on development. The second part, of course, is Squadron 42. So in fact, the $500 million is not being spent on one game, but on two, which actually puts a lot closer to the typical budgets for AAA titles than describing it as the price for one game. But what have we purchased for that? Well, with a degree of secrecy, nobody can say for certain, but what we do know is that this is a Chris Roberts game. So it is going to be about putting you in the middle of an interactive movie, because that is what Chris Roberts has been about all his professional life. But while the later Wing Commander movies used live actors and green screen, this is performance capture. And the difference will be the difference between being in the seat of the theater looking at the screen and actually walking around in the environment of the movie itself, fully in control of our paths and viewpoints. That's going to be a very unique experience, one not easily conveyed in a demo. To get there, they have a ton of performance capture and digital data of top-name actors. That's not an inconsequential asset. There's a lot that you can do with it. For example, if you just need to have Mark Hamill standing around or doing something in the background, you can, in effect, have some scale mocap actor wear a Mark Hamill suit, just like Andy Serkis can wear a Vandal suit. You have to negotiate usage rights, of course, but you don't have to manage Mark Hamill's schedule, travel, etc. So count that in the asset column. The other thing in the R&D assets for Squadron 42 is a lot of work on AI. I know that might seem like a joke considering the AI currently in the persistent universe, but Squadron is built around an entire ship with 40 crew members all operating independently under AI systems. But when it is ready, the ability to hire crew with gunner AI or engineer AI or pilot AI will certainly be a reality in the PU because those AIs will have already been built for Squadron 42. But when will it be ready, you demand? Frankly, for Squadron, I don't know. And if I did know, I still couldn't make it one day sooner. I do know, though, that I want it to not disappoint when it's ready. And not like the initial iterations of games like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk, which definitely did disappoint. I'd rather have it be delayed further than disappoint. And I think most of the early backers would concur. As for Star Citizen, I am content with having a clear idea of the road ahead and regular substantive advances toward it. Frankly, I am in some respects relieved that the road doesn't have a point labeled finished. The broad history of MMOs is that a few days after that point is when they reach peak user count and then begin the long, inevitable march towards shutdown. So no, I'm not at all eager for them to reach that point. And now for an update on our Grow the Channel ship giveaway. As of recording, we're at 90% of the subscriber goal and 89% of the membership goal, or the IA Expo, whichever comes first, to give away to some lucky player their choice of the Anvil Liberator, the Ship Shipping Ship for shipping your ships, or the Misk Odyssey Long-Length Lookabout Launcher Lorry. One entry per video. Members are entered automatically, and if the winner is a member as of the publication date of the winning video and at the drawing time, remember that if you've let your membership expire, they will win both the Liberator and the Odyssey. For non-members, just subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is who isn't going to finish the game if you just leave money and specs on the shelf. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.